Hey everyone, before we jump into today's episode, I want to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, Open Water. As a chef and restaurant owner, I know how important it is not only to serve amazing food, but also take care of our planet. Open Water makes that easy with their eco-friendly bottled water packaged in 100% recyclable aluminum bottles, helping to reduce the plastic waste. What's even cooler? Open Water is a female-owned company leading the way in sustainability, something we can all get behind. And here's the best part. They're giving our listeners 20% off. Just use promo code INTHEWEEDS at checkout. So whether you're hydrating your team or stocking up for your restaurant, make the switch to Open Water. Delicious water, a healthier planet, and great discount. Cheers to that. All right, I'd like to give a big shout out to our sponsors, Saltwerk. You can check them out at saltwerk.com. You ever wonder what a pinch of Iceland would taste like? Well, you have it now in the most sustainable, flaky sea salt in the world. I've actually traveled to Iceland. Their geothermal powered island is beautiful. There's just a sense of freshness in the air over there, and it translates to this salt. I love this salt. It's delicious. It's the most sustainable. Again, you can buy just the normal flaky sea salt, but they also have infused salts, which I've been using at home lately a lot. They have this birch smoked sea salt that I love using with seafood. They have the lava salt, which is super black and cool looking. It's got a certain different type of taste to it. They have the Arctic thyme salt, which I use for my pickling liquids. And again, guys, just don't think of salt as something to season post recipe. You can use all these salts in the recipe alone. At We The Pizza, we use their flaky sea salt in our dough preparation. And they have this seaweed salt that I just used at an event that I loved at the Indy 500. I made a plant-based crab cake, and I was looking for a little bit more of that ocean flavor. Guess what I used? Saltwerk's seaweed salt gave me just that ocean flavor that I needed for my plant-based crab cake. It was a hit. Guys, if you want to use my promo code, you can. It's at In The Weeds Pod. You can use it on their website. You'll get a 20% discount on all their items. Stock up. This salt is amazing. And again, it is powered 100% by geothermal energy, the most sustainable sea salt on the market. You're welcome. Get yours. No Salt Bay in the house, just Saltwerk. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the In the Weeds podcast, where we dive deep into the craziness of the restaurant industry and so much more. We discuss food, beverage, even food policy issues. Basically, if you love to eat and drink and are curious about this industry, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Spike Mendelsohn, a recovering celebrity chef, a long life restaurant rat. From washing dishes in my family's business to cooking at Michelin star restaurants, competing in reality cooking competitions, and serving as an advocate for food policy issues. My life is always in the weeds. We're broadcasting live from the District of Columbia, our nation's capital. On today's episode, we're joined by a living legend. He is a 4-time James Beard Award-winning chef, author, and global leader with over 45 years of leading and advocating for a more healthful, sustainable food system. He is the co-founder of Wholesome Wave and co-founder of Wholesome Crave. He is a super succulente human. Please welcome my friend, mentor, and huge inspiration, Chef Michel Nischan.
Succulente is an important word.
I hope you use all the words today. Succulente. Yeah. Fucculente.
AKA succulente with an F.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for being here. I know it's a tight schedule today. You're the best dressed host that we've had. I mean, guest that we've had. By the way, I'm the host. I forget. So what's up, Michelle? How you doing?
Good. Just busy.
Yeah.
In here, some hill visits today and all that good jazz, and then back home tonight.
Yeah. Well, tell me what are you in town? I think people are always interested why chefs are coming to DC, and I mean, I want to get to your background, which is dive a little deeper into that. But what are you in town for today?
Well, we have been supporting a movement that we helped create back in like 2009. Shortly after we started doubling SNAP for fruits and vegetables, we created a concept called fruit and vegetable prescriptions. that has really taken on a life of its own over the years. But it's expensive work. It's really difficult to do. But the concept is invest in food upfront to prevent somebody from getting a very expensive diet-related disease at the back end instead of waiting for them to get the disease and then prescribing the medicine for that, because medicine, dialysis, kidney transplants, way more expensive than food. So we have a national produce prescription collaborative that we founded of practitioners and academics and folks that are really working to move the lever on the policy, because we do believe that it's worthy of public support for government-sponsored health plans like Medicaid, like Medicare, to actually reimburse somebody for really good, healthy food choices so that we can avoid diet-related disease in the first place, maybe save some dough and make people happier and just so much more delicious.
Just better sustainable healthcare system, right? Just prevent it before it even happens.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because here in the West, we've disconnected food from health.
Yeah.
And we look at medicine as health, where, Ayurvedic practice, 8,500 years, Chinese medicine, 10,000 plus years. You have these food and health systems throughout the world where people are in these blue zones living very, very long, healthy, productive lives. Because they actually understand the connection between food and human health, and we kind of divorced ourselves from that. So it's going to be a little bit of a schlep to get back there, but I do believe more people are aware of it today than ever before. So that's good news for us.
That's good news, and I mean basically because of you, right? I mean, like, so what was the what was the original thought process of even getting into this stuff, like, for you?
No, that was, so my son Chris, back in I think it was 93 or 94, when he was 5 years old, was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. So I made the connection between food and human health. And it became very clear that what we did with his food strategy at home would have more to do with the length and the quality of his life than anything else. So, you start diving into that. And it gets pretty intense. And there was no internet back then.
Right.
You were alive.
I might have been alive.
Yeah. You were alive.
I was in 80.
Whether you were awake and aware. No.
Alive somewhere.
Yeah. But anyway, there was no internet. So it was all like libraries and publications and all that crazy shit. But it's once we started and had a pretty good idea of how we should be conducting ourselves as a family, it wasn't reconciling with the food I was serving in my restaurant. So I ended up doing the Heartbeat restaurant concept in 1997 at the First W as part of the Myriad Restaurant Group, because we ran the food and beverage for Starwood at that time. And it was a restaurant of well-being, local, organic, sustainable, but no flour, no cream, no butter, no sugar.
Yeah.
Got a lot of attention, provoked a lot of derision, got really great reviews in the New York Times.
First of its time,
and all that.
Right?
Yeah,
First of its time.
Really was. And they were totally trashed by the New York Post and the Daily News.
Of course. That must only be because you were working with Drew, probably. They wanted to give it to Drew.
They love giving it to Drew, and Drew loves taking it, I always love something to talk about. But anyway, and he's a change maker. But, that kind of led to me getting invited to all these think tanks around public health, because the late 90s was when the obesity epidemic was called out, and people started South Beach diet. What do I do to try to avoid obesity and all of the related diseases? And it's in those forums that I learned about the food stamp family of four that has, after they run out of benefits, like the second or the third week of the month, they have $2 for dinner for all four people. So it's 50 cents a head. There's no business model for that. There's just nothing that you could do for that. And that's what caused me to really, do something. When my son got sick and I realized what was going on, I could change my business model because I had customers who could afford, $20, $30 entrees. But for the family of four with $2 for dinner, there's nothing, and that's what led to founding Wholesome Wave.
Michel, we met over I think it's been over a decade ago. I stopped counting over.
It was a while.
Decade.
I stopped counting.
It was a while. It was a while ago. But one of the things I find so interesting about you is you are the epitome of the evolution of a chef. Do you know what I mean? And you have this classic, amazing background. And then you've also pushed the limits on creating different cuisine and different openings, different styles of restaurants. And now you're into policy, and you've been going at it for a very long time. What is none of it's easy, but do you find working through government and policy takes a long time rather than taking matters into your own hands? Like, you open a restaurant, you serve healthier food.
Right.
Okay, there's the reward, right? The customer comes in, they pay, you feel good. But now you've been cooped up in policy, and you've been at it with this food prescription thing for quite some time, right? So what are some of the successes along the way? And these things, I don't know if people understand like how much work this takes, how much time it takes to inform policy and change policy.
Well, when you really want to go after policy, it is a full contact sport. You have to be in it. You have to be in it a lot. You have to have a lot of patience. A lot of the systems that support our healthcare system, that support our current food system, they were designed many decades ago before there was any awareness of the impact of highly processed carbohydrates, ultra-processed foods on human health, conventional farming on environmental health. These were just, at the time, miracles of science. There was no indicators whatsoever. There were no indicators about what would happen to the land and what would happen to human health, because we had just no record of eating that type of food or farming in that way. And they're large systems. They were built after World War II, once we were convinced that World War III is right around the corner. So many billions of dollars went into building the system as it is today, right? So unwinding that stuff takes a lot of time. And there are still people who really believe, that have been schooled, that if you get sick, there's an app for that. There's a medication for that. There's a therapy for that. There's that whole movement away from food as the founding premise of your health is something that's going to take us some time to get back. But when it comes to policy, all of those things have to be unwound. I haven't found it really that difficult. I've found it to be a long game, but almost anything that we talk about when it comes to food and its impact on human health, environmental health, economic health, cultural health, et cetera, they're good news everywhere. It's what it does to empower people to express themselves culturally accurately and be able to carry on their traditions and pass those along to their children. The whole notion of when you make a purchase and there is a transaction, somebody benefits, a farmer benefits, a grocery retailer benefits, et cetera. When you buy more fruits and vegetables and you put that type of land into production rather than corn, cotton, soy, for which there are combines, GPS guided, doesn't need a human, that kind of a thing. No such thing as a zucchini combine. It's like people got to pick that stuff. A lot of the equipment is specialized, so you have all the support services industries who make transplanters and tractors and other things just get that type of support. So we've been able to, and the success that we have had, because the Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program, which was made permanent in the 2018 Farm Bill, named after my late co-founder, Gus Schumacher, that's a permanent piece of legislation. We got support from both sides of the aisle because there's good economic news, there's good societal news, there's good cultural news. It almost doesn't matter whether you're from the MAGA right or the AOC left or anything in between. There are a lot of truths to this work, which is, again, the magic of food. It just takes a long time. Because these systems are embedded, and there are some embedded interests. I do believe with the produce prescription program that, pharmaceutical companies are not going, and medical device companies don't want less people with diabetes. That's not their business model is not.
No, that's
based on that.
They want to make money.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens as we move these things along. But I'm very hopeful, and I got a good 30 years left in me. I'm 65,
Pushing it, baby. 65 going, you look like you're 45 with the energy.
Yeah. Let me show you my Medicare card.
Chef, so I think people know you as Michel Nischan today, but you weren't doing what you are doing now always. What was, what was your background? What was your, your early childhood as, how did you get into loving food? Did you have a restaurant background with your family or,
No, it was a farming background really. So
it was a farming background.
Yeah, both my parents, my dad was from Western Kentucky. My mom was from Southeastern Missouri. The funny thing is if you put a compass like near the Mississippi River and you drew a circle, they grew up like 120 miles from each other. But they independently had to like move to Chicago to meet, marry, and fall in love and all that stuff. But my dad's family, after World War II, when the big changes to policy happened to really promote large-scale agriculture and food processing and all of that stuff, because we needed to produce, manufacture, and stockpile as much food, fuel, and ammunition as we could
for the war.
Yeah, for the coming war, which also had the nuclear threat, right? So it was just impossible for smallholder farmers to make it. So my dad's family actually did the smart thing. They sold the farm. They did the Beverly Hillbillies. They sold the farm, loaded up the truck, and moved to Evanston. No cement pond. Only old people listening to this will know what I'm talking about. But they moved to Evanston. My mom, from Morley, Missouri, her dad, my grandfather, was stubborn and wanted to hold on to his farm. He didn't want to give it up. It was a multi-generational farm. Didn't want to be the one who didn't keep the farm going. So I used to have to go down there during the summer with my older brother and a whole bunch of my cousins to work the farm. We were the migrant farm families.
Wow.
We didn't know it, but my grandfather, who once was able to hire farmhands, couldn't hire farmhands anymore. So the grandchildren were the farmhands.
Yeah. Was this like a cattle farm or what?
No, it was hogs, goats, and chickens, watermelon, root crop, and sweet corn. And we would go down and work the farm every summer for like 7-8 weeks, and then go back home. And we would last week, my mom and dad would drive us down, drop us off. We would work the farm. They'd come back. All of my aunts and uncles would come back to pick up their kids, my cousins, and we would all can and pickle and cure and stuff like that. And everybody went home with a U-Haul trailer full of food. As the payment for lending out the grandkids.
So you look back on those, like, in those moments, was that a fun thing to do? Like, were you stoked to go to the farm during the summer?
I thought it was normal. When I went down, I wasn't happy about it because all my friends were like going to Rand Park and doing all these other cool things for the summer and talking about it. But then I would get down there and we would fish and hunt, and I loved the animals. I loved driving the shit spreader and and the tractor and working a power auger and stuff like that. You learn those things, and it's where we broke down hogs. We scalded and scraped and broke down hogs and goats and chicken and went fishing and cleaned fish and cooked, and I liked it. The weird thing is that I actually thought most people must be raised this way. Like my little myopic bubble of, lack of awareness of what other people were going through in their lives. But it ended up, really becoming the founding premise for my future.
So do you identify as a farmer first and then chef, or not?
No, I think I identify as a chef first because by the time my grandfather died when I was 17, I was a really good cook. But they hadn't passed on kind of the institutional knowledge of, I knew real basic stuff, about raising hogs, raising goats, raising chickens, how to terminate them as quickly and as mercifully as possible, how to make them something delicious. But when it came to when to move the fields, when to let them go fallow, how managing a compost pile, I knew, that, using the bucket on the front end loader to turn the compost pile kept everything rotting so that you could then go out and spread it on fields and grow stuff in it. But I didn't understand the whys of it as much. And I don't know if it was because my grandfather was running out of gas, and probably saw the inevitable future of the farm, not being able to pass it along to the kids. And that's what happened when he passed. I remember my mom had to go down with a family, and he actually died in debt. They sold the farm and still were in debt. And then all of my aunts and uncles, my mom had to come up with like $4,000 in 1976, which is a lot of freaking money. To just pay the debt off. Nobody got the farm. So the cooking part was something that seemed like everybody in my mom's family did. So it just came naturally. So you could literally kind of like learn by osmosis, especially if it's inside you. And I think there was a time my older brother hated it. He can't cook his way out of a paper bag today. Where is he? He might be able to scramble some eggs.
Is he Chicago still?
No, he's in Virginia.
Oh, he's in Virginia. Oh, yeah, he's Virginia.
Yeah, he just moved back up. He was in North Carolina or South Carolina for a while, but yeah.
So you were cooking at a young age.
Yeah.
What were some of the dishes? Like, were you just doing whatever you can?
Fried chickens, smothered pork chops, hog jowl,
that's
cornmeal catfish, collard greens, black-eyed peas, pepper white rice.
Food was like an integral part of your livelihood from a very young age.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. See, I mean, most people don't get that, right? Like we're like the lucky ones. I didn't grow up on a farm, but my mother was cooking since day one. We had hot meals three times a day, on the table, and I feel fortunate to be growing around food. So you're young, you're farming, you're cooking. What was like the step of like, I'm going to become a chef? Was it?
Oh no, that wasn't a step at all. It was, my mom and dad fell on hard times. It all happened like at once, right?
Yeah.
Grandfather passes away.
Yeah.
I'm graduating high school. My dad, before the laws and regulations and protections were in place to protect people's pensions.
Yeah.
Kind of like him and a bunch of his World War II buddies got reassigned desk jobs at a lower pay because they knew they would quit and then they wouldn't have to pay their retirement.
Yeah.
So my dad quit his job because they dissed him, and he and all of his buddies found out that the world didn't want a 55-year-old salesman, so he had nothing.
Yeah.
He just couldn't get work. We had a younger brother and sister. My older brother and I had to move out. My mom and dad had to downsize. And my mom is like, let's get you a job in a restaurant. You'll get a meal a day and a paycheck.
Yeah,
right? You can cook. So it really was just a kind of a survival strategy, defense mechanism.
At this time, this was still Chicago?
Yeah, it was Chicago.
Yeah.
All Chicago.
All Chicago. So what was your first restaurant job?
Oh, my first restaurant job was on the Russell Road exit, Illinois-Wisconsin border, called Center's Truck Stop. It just got demolished like about 7 or 8 years ago, but I used to like tape people there and say, that's my first job.
That's your first
job. Right
job.
there. And I was actually taking my kids to show them one day, and it was like a pile of rubble with wrecking balls and cranes. I'm like, no!
You're like, what's that?
But that was my first. But that led immediately to me. There was a guy there. The guy who owned the truck stop was a real workout, and he had a kitchen manager who's a former Navy cook who is very, very, very difficult. And I came in and really could cook.
Yeah.
I mean, their version of biscuits and gravy was a can of Hormel chipped beef.
Oh yeah.
And that white gloppy sauce.
Stuff.
Yeah. And frozen biscuits. And I came in, looked at a griddle, and I'm like, what a marvelous invention. I'd never seen anything. Cleaned it out, saved the grease, made gravy, real gravy, and baked biscuits. And the Navy cook, this Jack guy, got pissed off at me. He's like, you're going to make my work hard. I'm like, I'll do it all,
Yeah.
And the waitresses are like, wow, this is great, real biscuits and gravy. But his nephew was working there because he had trouble keeping staff, would come up during the week and work there because he worked in Chicago in restaurants. And he saw me working. He's like, you got skills. You need to get the hell out of here. It's like,
you need to go.
Yeah, so I worked at a place called Sage's Restaurant in Arlington Heights.
Okay.
And it was funny. He's like, I'll get you a job there. It's like $2 more an hour. I'm like, wow.
You're like,
yeah, let's do that. It's funny because it's just like I didn't know what to call shit, so I often was like relegated to prep and stuff like that. And I remember the Alsatian chef. We were in the weeds. Some people had quit. we're getting ready to open the restaurant. There's a leg of veal sitting on the counter, and guys are like hacking chunks off of it and pounding it out to make like a veal roulatini for these hors d'oeuvres, and just trying to hack it off and pound it out and make it as they go. I'm like, I can do that.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, you're the dumb white kid. I'm like, no, I can do that. And this like lead cook hands me a boning knife, and I start seaming this leg of veal out very rapidly, and they're like, holy shit, he's a butcher.
He can do it.
I'm not a butcher. Yeah, but I'm just like seaming it out, and they're like, give me the eye of the round. And I'm like, what's that? They're like, oh, it kind of looks like a dick. It's like that.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, yeah. And that's when they're like, oh, he doesn't know what to call stuff.
Yeah.
You know? So within a couple of months, the chef was like, will you be my sous chef? I'm like, what's that? He's like, $5 more an hour. I'm like, cool, I'm a sous chef.
Do it.
So I didn't think I was going to be a chef.
Yeah.
You know, I just...
But you never went
Food was easy for me.
You were self-trained. You never went to culinary school.
No.
Yeah,
no.
so self-trained. So Sage was the second place you went to.
Yep.
Alsatian, how do you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Alsatian chef?
No,
From
yeah,
Alsace?
yeah. Jean Witts, W-I-T-T-S, from
yeah.
Alsace. And then he introduced me to this guy, Wilfred Ladd, who was the chef at the time at Le Tour at the Park Hyatt, the original Park Hyatt.
Oh.
Very elegant, beautiful. Needed help, so I got a job there. He's like, oh, you have a future with Hyatt. And then I worked at the Hyatt Regency Woodfield, and then got promoted to Milwaukee. This is all within a couple of years.
So you were climbing the ranks pretty quickly.
Breakfast cook at a truck stop
Yeah.
to executive sous chef of the Hyatt Regency Milwaukee by 1980.
Yeah.
So it was like 3.5 years. And then I got poached from there, from this guy who wanted to open a restaurant called the Fleur de Lis, no relation to Hubert Keller's place.
Oh, okay.
The original Fleur de Lis
The famous
was actually,
DJ, Hubert Keller, you mean?
Yeah. OG, the famous OG.
Yeah.
But, so that was my first job as an executive chef. I was 22 years old.
Oh.
Crazy.
So your story is truly from like a truck stop cook to cooking to the Dalai Lama, which we'll get to because I obviously want to hear
rad.
that. Yeah, I don't want to jump too fast. So you're doing your thing. You're climbing the ranks. You know, at that point, were you still kind of, hey, I'm doing this for money, or I'm doing this. This is my career. Did you?
No. I was just like. Yeah, just before that, I was a musician in a band called Scoundrel, and I really loved it, but it was really hard to make money.
Yeah.
We were popular, but not making money. So I was underweight.
Yeah.
You know, I wasn't eating, and I was in a 2-bedroom apartment with like 3 other guys.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, so to me, the cooking thing was shit. I get a meal every day, sometimes 2 if you work a double. And if I work in 2 restaurants, I can have my own apartment. So to me, it was more about having my own apartment.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, wow, man, I can put food in the fridge, and when I come back from work, it'll still be there.
Yeah, totally.
It's kind of like, so to me, it was more all about that, and it fed me in that it was very similar to being in a band.
Yeah.
It's like collaboration, because I'm not a solo artist type guy.
Yeah.
You know, to me, it was like I was always like, the bass player sang, sometimes would play, guitar or whatever, but I was more about how do we keep the band together? How do we get the right exposure, the right jobs and stuff, and realizing that your keyboard player, your guitar player, your drummer, it's like everybody has a unique role to play.
Yeah.
And if you're doing it well as a unit, you can come up with some really great music. So it's the creative process was similar, the collaborative process was similar. So I'm like, I didn't miss the music. I mean, I missed it, but I didn't miss it like I thought I would miss it. At first, I'm like, I'll do this for a while, and then, I'll get back into the music business.
Yeah.
But that desire went away pretty rapidly because of the similarities between the two, and I just kept doing it, and it just doors kept opening for me along the way. And
What was the oh shit moment, like door that opened, that kind of, I think everyone has that moment in life or in their career where they're like, oh man, like this is so cool. Like I've turned the page here. I'm on my way.
Yeah, I think it was like the Fleur de Lis, because before the Fleur de Lis, I could afford my own apartment because I was working, two almost full-time jobs, one full-time, almost full-time as a rapidly ascending cook. I was doing well economically because it's like 2 jobs and a little bit of overtime works wonders, right? And then when I got the job at Fleur de Lis, I'm like, this is cool because now I'm a shot caller, right? Now I can actually go, because one of the things that perplexed me about being in the restaurant business were those really shitty pink and green 5x6 tomatoes in February, the fucking mealy and so undelicious. It's like you actually had to jump through fiery hoops to cook them to make them taste like something, and then you still had to add tomato paste to have whatever you were cooking taste like tomatoes.
Sugar or something to
it's
sweeten them
wild.
up.
It's kind of weird. But anyway, that's, so I started doing direct relationships with farmers, paying them petty cash. Paying, because I knew how to use a seed catalog. It's like, I need this many tomatoes, cucumbers, basil, it's different stuff, right? Some sweet peppers. I'll pay you in advance because I knew they needed the crop insurance, half. And I'll pay you the rest, when you deliver it. And they're like, we're not going to deliver it. Well, these are like corn, oat, and soy growers, right? It's like, so I'm talking them, because specialty crop farmers were kind of out. At the time, they had no farm bill support. It was crazy, right? But it's like they're like, we'll weed it, we'll water it, it'll be awesome, but you got to come and get it. We're going to be harvesting corn, soy.
So you send trucks over there to pick up? You have to.
No. I had a little Nissan pickup truck.
You were just picking up all your own ingredients.
me and a bunch of my guys, would go and just fill the back of it. They would bring their cars. We'd drive the truck out. They'd fill their trunks, the back of my truck, and then we would take it back to the restaurant. Yeah, crazy.
So what was But
the tomatoes were good.
The tomatoes, okay, they weren't mealy. So what was your first actual restaurant like with your restaurant?
Oh, my place was actually Mishmash, and that was in the early 90s.
Why was it called Mishmash again?
Well, so that was my nickname. Because I was raised kind of on Southern country cooking, South Central Midwestern country cooking. And then I started working in these European restaurants and learning things like, because like when you make a gravy, South Central Midwestern, any country cooking, it's kind of like you make a roux, right? A
roux to thicken it, guys.
Yeah, a roux to thicken it. You mix flour with a fat. And it was often for me, it was like pig fat, goat fat, chicken fat. Not butter, right? But then I learned about this whole thing of, and stocks were broths, chicken broth, goat broth, pig broth, no stock, right? But the whole notion of stock and long cooking stock and then reducing the stock and getting it to a point where you can actually mount it with a fat. When that happened to me, I was like, oh, wow, like opened up. And it also kind of like freaked out, like Alsatian chef Jean Witz, right? It's like, I'm like, well, if you can mount it with butter, you can mount it with bacon fat. You can mount it with chicken fat. And then I learned about duck fat and goose fat. And I'm kind of like, wow, this stuff is outrageous, right? So I started screwing around with stuff like that. And people are like, you're all over the place. You're like a mishmash.
You're like a mishmash. I love that. So that just stuck?
That was like my nickname.
And that was Chicago still?
That was, I was called that then. And then, as I kind of moved through, I started working for, I went from Hyatt to Interstate Hotels, started opening Marriotts for Interstate Hotels to get my business education, which worked really well. But then when I kind of got into my own thing, and I'm like, I'm going to open a restaurant that kind of like pulls together everything that I've been doing over the last, decade and a half. People are like, what are you going to call it? I'm like, well, what's it going to be like? I'm like, it's going to be kind of like a mishmash.
It's a mishmash.
That would be a great name.
I love it.
I'm like, I hate that
We need
name.
to reopen that
I'm
restaurant.
like, I hate that name. I hated that name. It's like, I kind of like brought it out as like a joke, and then people are like, no, you got to call it that. So it's just,
So how old are you around then? Do do you think? Do you remember? Like, I don't know. Are you
Yeah,
early
30.
20? Oh, the 30s. Okay.
Yeah.
So what was the process of opening up your first restaurant? Was that like, did you have partners? Like, how did you accomplish
No, it was
that? Like,
so. My wife's parents had a monetizing event, and they kind of distributed to each of the kids like $30,000, and said, "Here's for a down payment on the home."
Yeah.
And Lori was like, "Can we
just live in our restaurant?
Open a restaurant?"
Lori, so you had already, you married already?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You were already
Oh,
married.
yeah. No,
Yeah, yeah.
Fleur de Lis.
Tell-
I
tell
met
us-
Lori there.
Oh, was Lori in the work? Like
At the Fleur de Lis.
She worked there? Or
Yeah,
she was,
so we've been married. It's going to be our 40th anniversary on June 14th.
big shout out to Lori.
So
She's amazing.
I was at the restaurant was open for about a year. Slammed all the time, Peak and Valley business. Slam,
Yeah.
rut, slam, rut, slam, rut. That's how our nights went. All of a sudden, everything started calming down, so I thought that the magic was wearing off. So, I never got to spend much time in the dining room because we were constantly getting slammed, then downtime, replenish, slam,
Yeah.
all that stuff. And I
We're
say to
chefs-
my front of the house manager, Kent, I'm like, "What's going on? Is the magic wearing?" He's like, no, it's this new hostess. She doesn't take shit from anybody. And she gets customers to do what they need to do. Sit in the right section at the right time. Because so much of the restaurant were these floor-to-ceiling French windows facing Lake Michigan that everybody wanted a window seat.
Yeah.
And previous hosts and hostesses, including my front of the house partner, didn't have the stones to tell people, no, you have to sit at this table.
Yeah.
Right? So I go out, I have to meet this person. So I'm looking around the dining room, and there's, a couple of servers, some bus people, everyone's setting up, some redheaded hostess, and I'm like, I go up to the host stand, I'm like, "Who's this Lori?" And she looks at me, she's like, "I would be this Lori." And I'm like, totally intimidating, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I'm like, whoa.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, I just kind of like, duh. And I had a girlfriend at the time. Right?
Oh, okay.
And- but anyway, I ended up, that was, waning. And I kind of like asked my girlfriend to move out because she was trying to get me to take a job at GE with her dad and her brothers.
Oh, she's like,
9 to 5. And I'm like, no effing way. And when the minute Lori found out that this person had left, she was like all over me. She's like, "Okay, we got to get you a black book.
butter on
we got to
bread."
get you
Yeah.
dating. We got to get you out there." She had like her hooks in me. She had her
Yeah.
own idea of what my future was going to look like.
So thank you, Lori.
Yeah,
we owe Lori
She
many
saved
thanks.
my ass. Yeah.
I like that. You just asked your ex-girlfriend to leave, to move out. Will you just move out?
No, it was getting to, you know how it is, man. It's
Yeah.
like so many of us, in our business, it's like you meet somebody who's not in our business.
Oh, yeah.
And there's an attraction there, and even genuine affection, all of that good stuff. I mean, I love this person. This person loved me, but
Yeah.
we were definitely diverging because to me it was all about more. I had no trouble.
Yeah. Well, once they get a
14,
taste-
15 hours, two weeks in a row without a day off. It doesn't certain people aren't bothered by that. It's like,
Yeah.
try to tell a musician to stop making music
Totally.
when they're on a run.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
No.
So it just got to a point where it became toxic because my life was going in one direction. Her life, she wanted my life to go in a different direction.
Totally.
And it's
It's
just
not-
a place
it's not
where
for
I couldn't-
everybody.
It wasn't, yeah.
Yeah.
So it was kind of a little bit of a mutual agreement, though I'm the one who did more of the pushing because I'm like, I can't do what I do all day and then get an earful all night.
Yeah.
You
So you and Lori opened up Mishmash together then?
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah. She was the front of the house and I was the back of the house.
And then that lasted for a good old time.
Yeah, it was like, 5 or 6 years. We made early mistakes,
Yeah.
wildly successful, took on a partner who was a regular customer who had just sold his publishing business. And it's like, you guys, and I didn't have a real good handle on the business end
Yeah.
of it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we were doing okay, but I wasn't sure that we could grow. someone's like, why don't you do catering? It's because like my kitchen's as big as this room.
Yeah.
It's like, no, no. I mean, I know how to cater, obviously. I worked in hotels and stuff, but it's like you need facility. We don't have the facility. We don't have the money to do the facility. This guy came along, and it ended up being a very toxic partnership and relationship. And
that happens.
We had to get out. We had to get out. And it's like right around the time that we hit a wall with this pretty dark, negative person is when I met Drew.
Oh, I was going to ask you. How did Drew get you involved?
Yeah. So
wait, were chefs like a thing at like while you were opening up Mishmash? Did they have that celebrity notoriety yet?
We with our customers we did.
Yeah.
With our customers we did.
Yeah.
Their food TV wasn't happening yet.
Yeah.
It was just in the nascency, right? But
had you met Shep Gordon by then at all?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
So couple more years.
So a couple more years. So Drew met you at an event?
No, at the Beard Awards. So
because we've talked about Drew a couple times on the show. We had John Mooney on last podcast.
Dr. John.
Which had beautiful things to say about you and what you guys did.
Well, he just needs to have his head examined.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, we did these gospel brunches at Mishmash because I wanted to stay connected to my musical heritage. So we had very robust, from Thursday through Saturday, incredible jazz. Guys like T. Monk Jr., Dave Brubeck Jr.
Oh, wow.
Rhythm and blues, Lonnie Liston Smith, Stanley Banks, Lonnie Youngblood, who was James Brown's band leader for like 30 years.
Wow.
Incredible music program. And we were getting a lot of pressure to open for brunch. So we decided to do a gospel brunch.
Yeah.
So it was all the food I was raised on, smothered pork chops.
Yeah.
As things that
God,
white guys don't cook, right?
Yeah.
Well, right. But I could do it blindfolded. So we did that. So the New York Times, this is how long ago it was, when the food section was on Wednesdays, we were on the cover for our gospel brunch. When you opened it inside, it was a big story on Nobu. With Drew and Nobu there.
Oh, yeah.
So our story finished on one page and their story started on another. So I'm at the Beard Awards and I hear this mishmash.
Signature
so
Drew.
we connected, but then there was, I forget her name. There was a woman who did PR for like Don Pintabona, who was Drew's chef.
Yeah.
And,
at Tribeca Grill or?
Yeah, Tribeca Grill.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
I was confiding in her about this horrible partnership gone awry. And she said, Tribeca Grill needs help. I'm like, Tribeca Grill, Drew Nieporn? I'm in. So she introduced me to Don. I interviewed with him. I interviewed with Drew, and they hired me.
Yeah. So you were the chef at Tribeca Grill for a while.
Chef de cuisine.
Chef de cuisine under...
Yeah, Don, and then Don left.
And then
But then we did the deal with the W's.
Yes.
So it was kind of a couple of things. Drew had this idea. We knew we were going to do the W deal. I had already done a lot of consulting for the Myriad Restaurant Group, for Interstate Hotels, who I used to work for.
Yeah.
Right? It's opening independently operated restaurants within their hotels.
Yeah.
And it was popular. It was at the forefront now of all those independent restaurants now where the hotel will like build out and do all the TE and everything like that, and then lease the space out to the independent operator who really knows how to deliver on food and service. We were at the forefront of that.
As a new model.
Yeah, it's a new model, right? So it was exciting. So we had done a bunch for Interstate Hotels. A bunch of Interstate guys were poached by Barry Sternlicht to start Starwood Hotels and the W brand. And they decided that 100% of their food and beverage would be management contracted out. So they hired the Myriad Restaurant Group. We did the first 6 W's. That was my project.
Yeah.
And
so
I did
first
Heartbeat.
6 W's.
Yeah.
So what were do you remember the restaurants under there?
Well, no. So
were
it
all
was
different.
It was
or?
Heartbeat.
Yeah.
Icon. There was two hotels at 39th in Lexington, and then Seattle, Washington, San Francisco, and Sydney, which I didn't have anything to do with.
Was that the jellyfish restaurant with the jellyfishes?
Yes.
hanging?
Yeah.
What was the name of that?
No. That's
Oh.
Pat Coletto's place with Tracy Desjardins.
Oh,
that was a Pat
okay,
Coletto
okay,
place.
okay. But that was a Marriott
But
group
anyway,
one,
so
yeah.
we did a number of those projects, but Drew, the W on 49th Street was supposed to be like a spa hotel.
Yeah.
So they wanted a restaurant of well-being. I had my frustrations because of what I had learned with Chris having diabetes and me feeding customers things at the time that I didn't feel I should be feeding my family.
Yeah.
And it was difficult for me. Drew had been to the Mayo Clinic and told if he didn't lose 100 pounds, they would give him somewhere between 2 and 5 years,
Yeah.
to live if he didn't do something about it. So Drew came up with it. He's like, Michel, you're this local organic sustainable guy. You got your frustrations with your son. I need to eat healthier. There's got to be a way that we can do a restaurant where people can come in and order anything off the menu and be safe no matter what their health condition is, unless they're allergic to something like celery or whatever it might be, right? So that's how we came up with the concept for Heartbeat.
So Drew was into this. Like
Yeah,
there was
totally.
not much resistance.
Yeah, it
from
was
him.
his idea.
It was.
It was his idea. He was
sh-
always ahead. Yeah.
Big shout out to Drew. And this is where you made those vegetable sauces, right?
Yeah,
Like, this is-
absolutely. Yeah. Juicing sweet potato.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Michel told me. I mean, listen, Michel and I have been friends, so we've talked about some of this. But I was mesmerized to hear that he was kind of the first guy to do these French style sauces, if you will, of
Well,
reduction,
actually,
right?
it was Jean-Georges. He
It was
was
Jean-Georges,
doing it.
okay.
He was doing it Lafayette, but he was like, he would like juice carrot juice, reduce it a little bit, and then serve it with sea scallops and stuff, or reduce red beet juice all way down,
Yeah.
and then
no
use it
no
to
mounting
sauce
of
a plate.
fat.
Yeah.
No mounting of fat.
No,
at the
you
restaurant.
could. I don't think he was mounting them with fat.
Yeah.
For me, it was that was happening. So I'm like, there's got to be something more there. So I ate at Lafayette, and I'm like, it was only part of the program.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm like, this has to be the whole program. So I'm just like, I'm just going to buy a bunch of vegetables and shit and juice them and see what happens.
Yeah.
So Drew had Reebok Sports Cafe, Midtown Manhattan, and it was the only restaurant that he had that had industrial juicers.
Yeah.
Centrifugal juicers and omega worm juicers and everything. So I just showed up, and Jimmy Ackard was the chef, executive chef, and I remember bringing in sweet potatoes. He's like, do sweet potatoes have juice? I'm like, we'll find out. So I just like juiced it, put the juice in a sauce pot, heated it, and it immediately thickened, but way too thick.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like,
Because they're super starchy.
yeah,
right? Is that
super
right?
starchy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, let's let it stand.
Yeah.
And, and the starch falls to the bottom. And I remember this when I worked at a restaurant called Le Perroquet in Chicago for a very short period of time. They had gratin dauphinois potato, and I remember having to mandolin in the potatoes.
Yeah.
And then in the water from mandolining the potatoes was the potato starch, and we had to save that,
Yeah.
right, to cook with, right? So I'm like, well, if we let this stand, I'm thinking maybe the starch will settle, and it did. So you let it stand for like about 4 hours.
Yeah.
And you can pour it off.
Pour off the top. Yeah.
Then you can reduce it by about half. The remaining starch catches up and thickens it, but because it's been cooking for a while, the starch flavor is completely cooked out. You can't taste it.
Yeah.
And it's just sweet potato. It's amazing,
I love
right?
that.
So I'm like, oh, wow. Corn, rutabaga.
Just you went ham on everything.
And then, pristine stocks, no mirepoix, no herbs, because the one thing when you're not using fat is that every flavor shows up.
Yeah.
So it can get muddy really, really quickly. So we just did bones and water.
Yeah.
Blonde bones and water, brown bones and water, no tomato paste, no mirepoix, no anything.
Yeah.
Because the vegetable itself would take over. We did a pork dish where we would do very, very clean, pristine pork stock reduced, rutabaga juice reduced, and then you could mount it.
Yeah.
You could mount it with fat. You could mount it with grapeseed oil. You could mount it with extra virgin olive oil. We weren't using any animal fats at the time. And if you reduced it even more and mounted it with fat and put it in an EC container, you had a foam that would never break down.
Yeah.
Right?
So way ahead of your time with this restaurant.
Well,
Would you say-
I think I was right on time.
Yeah.
Chris was sick. I needed to feel complete.
Yeah.
I knew there were other people that were out there that were suffering too, that needed alternatives and would come to a restaurant and feel embarrassed to have to ask the server to substitute this, or can they do this without butter?
Yeah.
It's just like, it's, you know, it was the right time. Drew had the right idea at the right time.
What was the response fantastic for that spot?
It was controversial. It was interesting. The response was great. I mean, it just, the customers that came in that would eat and say, oh my God, you know, you hit me with like 5 courses. And I was like dreading it, and I left and I'm like, wow, I feel great.
Yeah.
And I could sleep.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't, it's, you know, it's like you do like a multi-course meal at a lot of restaurants where a lot of these ingredients and all the hidden ingredients, the mirepoix and all the stuff that goes into the stock, and it's just like you're consuming literally so many ingredients when you look at traditional cooking, right?
Yeah.
So I just think it was, so we had that response, but then I had some food critics who were like, you're not using butter, I'll never take you seriously.
Yeah.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
that kind of a thing. So it was edgy. Yeah, I got to
who,
admit.
Ruth? Like Ruth was it Ruth?
Ruth was cool. She gave us a good review.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how'd Paul Newman get in the picture here?
Well, that was, so Nell and I knew each other for some time through Chefs Collaborative. You know, she was big in the local organic sustainable thing. I was big in the local organic sustainable thing. This is back in the days where, you know, if we would sit on a panel, there'd be like 30 people in the room. Now, if we sit on a panel, there's like 1,000 people in the room.
Yeah.
Type thing. But her dad, the Westport Country Playhouse is like 10 minutes from my house. And it's the original summer stock theater. Paul and Joanne, when they fell in love and decided to have a family, they didn't want to be part of the LA scene, so they moved to Westport because he had been hosted there when he used to play on Broadway. Fell in love with the Westport Country Playhouse, and it's like, it's one of the first places in America where artists produce their own work. So My Fair Lady was born there, Oklahoma was born there, and in the early 2000s, it was getting ready to spontaneously kind of combust.
Yeah.
You know, because of neglect. So he and Joanne kind of took it over, did a capital campaign. But always right next door to the Westport Country Playhouse was a little restaurant. And Paul just loved it, called Players Tavern. And he and the people who played at the Playhouse would go in there and then sing and dance and party and stuff. And he just wanted to have a restaurant. Originally, Newman's Own was going to be a restaurant, not a food brand, but his manager kept talking him out of it. And he was at a point in his life when he and Joanne did the Playhouse. He was like, screw you.
Yeah.
I'm doing a restaurant.
Yeah.
So Nell reached out to me. And at that time, I had done the deal in India. So I had John Mooney was living there.
John was with you. Yeah. John was with you.
He lived in India for me.
Yeah.
Just for pure restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, because he was my chef de cuisine at Harpy.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like he knew.
How'd you meet John? He just applied, or Drew recommended him, or
he applied.
Yeah.
He applied, and I'm like, this is the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is the guy.
What a guy.
You know, this is the guy. Curious, smart, real, grounded, but, you know, edgy.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
just like
Yeah.
all of it. He had all of it, which you needed to do something as outlandish as what we were doing at that time, you know, and still wake up every morning and be jazzed about it. You know? It's kind of like, you know, accolades on one side, slings and arrow on the other side. It's like,
he was telling me a story. So you guys eventually were able to cook for the Dalai Lama, right? How did that come about?
Well, so Shep and I met. I think it was. The W was like under construction. I was still at Tribeca Grill and experimenting with the food and doing the stuff up at Reebok Sports Cafe. And Harvey Weinstein found himself in the same position as Drew. He was over 300 pounds.
Yeah.
And was told, Drew sent him to his doctor. His doctor said the same thing. So Drew's like, we have a guinea pig, right? You know, you're going to cook for Harvey. And Jane Rosenthal was like the person who was going to curate it and make sure that he got his meals every day. And it never worked out because Harvey's like one of the most uncooperative people anybody could ever meet. But I remember Drew's like, I was getting frustrated. I'm like, can I just focus on heartbeat and not worry about being this guy's personal chef?
Sure.
Because it's just like,
Yeah, you're like, come on.
So they had a board meeting. So it was like, Weinstein, Drew, like De Niro, Bill Murray, Shep, couple of like 10 or 12 of them, and it's like, cook your heartbeat food, and we'll send it out, and then you can come out and talk about it.
Yeah.
And do the course. I'd come out to talk, and Harvey be like, we're having a meeting here. It's just being very difficult, right?
Totally, yeah.
So it's just like, I'm like, okay, so I would just move on and then kneel down and tell other people who seemed genuinely interested what the food was all about and stuff like that. And it's just like every time I came out, Harvey's like, him again. It's just like, he's just being such a dick, And I just remember going back in the kitchen, and Shep came in. He's like, who are you? He's like, Harvey's not rattling you, that kind of a thing, It's just like, he's like, are you Buddhist? I'm like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean,
I will be if you want me to.
No, I'm just kind of like, I think we move about life in a certain way. And, I think the thing that even allows you and I to have this conversation means that the spirit within us is likely going to outlast, the organic matter of our body. Not curious about reincarnation. I really don't care. I just do believe that how we conduct ourselves now will have everything to do with the next part of our journey. That's my thing.
Yeah.
It's not Buddhism. It's not an ascribed religion or anything. It's a spirituality, right? But so Shep and I hit it off.
Yeah.
And when he, and there was another guy, Mickey. I keep forgetting Mickey.
Yeah, Michel. Michel introduced me to Shep too on the North Shore. So I'm forever grateful for that as well. Yeah,
he's one of the most beautiful human beings you'll ever meet. But he used to curate for His Holiness when he would come to the United States.
Yeah,
would set up all the venues, the big Central Park thing and all that jazz. So Shep's like, hey, listen, His Holiness is coming to the U.S. Want to do a big event. The W had just opened. We're going to do a fundraiser there.
Yeah. So
we did a fundraiser for His Holiness, and it was, His Holiness and Richard Gere and Goldie Hawn and all those folks at the head table, the dais, and then 300 people. And it was, the chefs were, Shep was close personal friends with Roger Verger, so he came over. It was
big time.
Roger, Jean-Georges, Danielle, Nobu, me, Mark Tarbell, Carrie Simon, Marcus.
Yeah.
And it's like, so we curated the chefs and everything like that. We all cooked together.
Yeah.
And it was so funny during the VIP thing, when His Holiness, it's like people paid like the mega dollars so they could meet him. All His Holiness wanted to do was meet the chefs.
Yeah.
so he's like hanging out with us.
He knows.
And he's like guessing what nationality everybody is. And it's like his handler kept trying to pull him away.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, he just wanted to like hang with the chefs.
So did he have like any dietary restrictions or like what?
No.
No.
And I thought he would. So,
yeah.
Well, so Shep is like, you're going to cook for His Holiness. So I said to Hideyasu Numa, who's a good friend of John's, and an amazing chef, Japanese Buddhist. I'm like, no, Hideo is going to cook for His Holiness.
Yeah, yeah.
Because he is a Buddhist.
Yeah.
He is a spiritually connected to this defined religion. Let's let Hideo cook for him.
Yeah.
Right? So he made this incredible ramen noodle dish, et cetera, et cetera. But after I'm going through all this, I'm like, so Shep, here's what we're doing. Is that okay? He's like, you know what his favorite breakfast? You know what his favorite breakfast is, Michel? That's how Shep talks. He's like, well done eggs, well done bacon, cooked overhead.
Perfect. That's a perfect impersonation. I love that.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Yeah. I'm like, well, Hide's gonna do noodles.
Yeah.
You know?
So that must have been one of your top ones, right? I mean, cooking
It is.
for the
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It just.
I mean, you've had so many experiences, though.
I just, I've been blessed.
Yeah,
And I'm lucky.
And it's great it's great. Although you never truly made it as a rock star. You still are a rock star in your own right, and you get to play music with some of the best artists still to this day. I mean, you hang with Willie. You do this amazing event every year. Can you tell us about the event?
Yeah. So Luck Reunion.
Yeah.
It's at Willie's Ranch, Luck, in Spicewood, Texas, and they do a reunion concert every year, and they bring entrepreneurs, nonprofit leaders from all over the country, a variety of causes and stuff like that, and set up, the village. Luck it was built as the backdrop, as the set for Red-Headed Stranger, the one movie that Willie did, right?
Which Shep said he paid for, by the way, the set. I don't know. So there's some story there.
They're just going to burn it down. And Willie's like, no, let's keep it, So they do a concert there every year during South by, because all the musicians come in. It's very Farm Aid style, so a bunch of musicians come. It's usually about 4,500 people, but the day before is when they bring all these other folks in that they've collected over the years, these nonprofit folks and social entrepreneurs and stuff, and we cook for them. You know? So it's like, it's you and I.
I've been there before. You do an amazing
with
potluck.
Marcel and Hung. And
Yeah.
But anyway, it's
and
like
we screwed up the house. Marcel did, not me.
Well, some things never change. No, but that's the Willie thing, and
But you also get. I mean, I've seen you jam with Jack Johnson in the past. I mean, Willie, where do you get the confidence to get? I mean, like pick up the guitar and you roll.
No, if you play, it's kind of like if you cook, you cook. It's like, remember, like we were at Willie's house, right? We go up to the house and he's like, well, let's do dinner tonight. And it's like, here's what we have, and then we go in the kitchen and just like,
and we just cook.
Yeah, we just
that's
cook.
Kind of how it is with music.
That's how music is. Yeah. If you can play, you can play. If you can hang, you can hang. And the amazing thing about the music community is that everyone's pretty welcoming to it, I mean, just like in the food business, there are those who are, difficult, egotistical, all about themselves and their brand and stuff like that. But largely in our culinary community, it's like, oh, what'd you just do? Wow, what'd you got? Whoa, what about that? Oh, and you start riffing off of each other, and it becomes, even sometimes it can be competitive, but it's good-natured competitive, because we're all learning and breathing and moving our way through this world of food, just like musicians are moving their way, trying to make sense of the world through music. We're just trying to make sense of the world through fucking food. It's delicious, it's amazing, it's profound, but it's also a very, very basic human need that without it, we die. I mean, it's just kind of like, so why not make it delicious?
You gotta, I'll never forget one of my favorite, I've had many favorite moments with you, but one of them has been when I was invited to the boot camp in San Francisco. It's truly where I had the confidence to kind of take on some policy of myself and get involved in advocacy. You guys, had a 4-day boot camp. It was amazing. You paired us up with some musicians. And you may not remember this or not, but I was a huge Jack Johnson fan, like before meeting you, I mean, I think it was like the first thing I ever downloaded on Pandora or something like that. And so we were at boot camp, and I was paired up with this guy named Jack and Kim. And at that point, still as a super fan, I hadn't made the connection. I think he had his like bald head or something like that, right? He had shaved his head, and I was like, and I spent like 2 days doing orientations with him, this, that, and the other. And it was nighttime. We went in the jacuzzi, right? And it was Lori, yourself, me, I think Kim, Jack. At that time, I still didn't know it was Jack. And we had our shirts off, we had our bathing suits on, and we were just sitting in the jacuzzi. We were looking at the stars. And Lori says, oh, let's put on some Jack Johnson. I was like, oh, let's do it. I was like, I love Jack Johnson. Still, I had not made the connection.
I do remember it.
I still had not made the connection, right? And then all of a sudden we're in the jacuzzi, and I bust out my phone. I'm like, oh, look, there's this amazing app that you could look at the sky, and you could look at the stars, and you could look like all these things, right? Yeah. And Jack is next to me, and he's like, let me look through that. He's like, he hadn't seen the app. I think it's called Skywalker or something. I don't know what it is. And he points the phone, and he's like looking at this constellation, right? And he's like, I have a song. He's like, I wrote a song off that constellation or something like that. And I was like, in my bathing suit, soaking wet, right next to Jack. He had my phone, and that's the fucking moment where I was like, oh, wait a second.
Yeah.
That's Jack Johnson next to me in the jacuzzi. We're listening to his music, and he's telling me about the song. It fucking blew my mind.
Yeah.
Right? It blew my mind. But, you know, it just goes to show you what you started back in the day. I mean, you've always been a trailblazer, right? And you've inspired so many chefs to kind of step out of their kitchen and do a little bit more, right? Whatever it may be. You've never told them, hey, this is what you have to do. Whatever's personal to you, whatever brings you joy, you know, kind of support them. And these boot camps that you guys have put on have churned out thousands of fantastic chefs. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Because I know you have to crash the hill here soon.
I got to boogie and do my thing.
Yeah.
But no, we just... we as chefs, as creatives, as craftspeople, as technicians, as community business leaders, employers, taxpayers, all of that jazz, you know, have often more influence than we actually understand. You know, we're just doing our thing, but in doing it, if we're doing it for the right reasons in the right way, a lot of people trust us.
Yeah.
You know, from the MAGA right to the AOC left and everything in between, it's like, you know, somebody comes to our restaurant on a Friday night, it's like, you know, Michelle, my daughter married a vegan, what do I do? You know, my sister-in-law has type 2 diabetes, can you help me?
Yeah.
Is this organic thing real, whatever? They come to us for information, right? So there's a lot of influence in that. And, you know, the interesting thing to me is that individual chefs, we're talking about it with chefs and musicians, if you can cook, you can hang in the kitchen. If you can play, you can hang with any musician. You know, you just do it. It's a welcome, open thing. But when it comes to the influence and organizing your influence a way that it can actually maybe make the world a little bit better of a place through food, it's up to each individual chef what that journey is. And my premise in the boot camps always has been, you know, the chefs that are coming to this special place at this one time, they have the talent. They already have it. They have the thing that allows them to hang with any cook, just like any musician. With any musician, they have that. You know, let's give them the basic understanding of how that can be transformed into a voice that can influence hundreds or thousands more of people, so that food does become more important, so that we can, back to the beginning of the conversation, unwind the disconnect that Western approach has taken of the importance of food and health and economic health, human health, environmental health. It's just like food touches all those things, right? You know, so it's, you know, and we're going to continue to move that work forward. Beard continues to do the boot camps. Our next move at Wholesome Wave, my nonprofit, is to actually start providing the mentorship and the
tell us a little bit about that.
The guidance, so that chefs that have been to boot camp or who may never go to a boot camp but are already doing great things beyond the four walls of their kitchen can be in community with other chefs who really want to riff off of each other and learn more about how to be effective change makers in the place that they call home.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really based on the premise of the power of food, and more to come and more to talk about. I apologize, but I do have to go to the hill.
Yeah. Listen, the man is busy. Michel, just one last thing before you go. I mean, we are sitting here in DC Central Kitchen. You know this organization really
sure do.
well. You know, they do so much good over here, obviously churning out fantastic, you know, chefs into the business. You know, could you tell us just a little bit about Wholesome Crave as well? Because there's Wholesome Wave.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Can you just tell us a little bit about the Wholesome Crave as well?
Yeah, so Wholesome Crave, it's a plant-based soup company to support Wholesome Wave, because Wholesome Wave, we're the guys who created doubling SNAP for fruits and vegetables when it was illegal. It's now a permanent part of the Farm Bill, yay.
That's right.
Gus Schumacher Nutrition Incentive Program. Produce prescriptions, it's always about fruits and vegetables for us, so I created a plant-based food company. We're starting with soup, but we do culturally authentic, no analogs, all real food, you know, for large scale. Yeah. It's kind of the Newman's own model. Wholesome Wave owns the intellectual property to the name, so Wholesome Crave sells into Google, Amazon, universities like UMass Amherst, Vanderbilt, et cetera. And then Wholesome Wave gets a gross revenue licensing royalty that's tax-free.
Beautiful.
So that way it supports the work that we do, because it's almost impossible to raise funding for advocacy because everybody thinks that it's partisan. And my message to everybody is food is nonpartisan.
Yes.
It's not even bipartisan, it's nonpartisan. It just shouldn't be. It's like, come on guys, let's not mess with the stuff that allows us to not only survive but thrive.
Yeah.
And make it so that everybody, regardless of their age, their race, their ethnicity, their zip code, can feed their families well.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, you are truly a man that is always in the weeds. Michel, tell everybody where they can go to find your stuff and how they can help this grand mission that you're on.
Yeah, just wholesomecrave.com and wholesomewave.org.
Yeah.
And just reach out, man.
Reach out.
And I'll tell you how you can help.
And do your thing. Well, Michel, it's been a pleasure. We're going to do a little out. I know this was a short one, but we'd love to have you back again whenever you're in town.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks so much. Really,
there's so much more to talk about with you and unpack.
Yeah,
so
never dull.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this captivating episode of In the Weeds with our legendary guest chef, Michel Nischan. You can learn more about Chef Nischan by visiting www.chefnischan.com and www.wholesomewave.com. A special shout out to our fantastic sponsors, Just Iced Tea and We the Pizza. Discover the refreshing taste of Just Iced Tea at eatthechange.com and satisfy your pizza cravings at We the Pizza at wethepizza.com. You won't regret it. And a huge thank you to our broadcast home, DC Central Kitchen, for their unwavering support. They're not just serving up food, they're serving up real change. Learn more and get involved at dccentralkitchen.org. To catch up on past episodes or to subscribe for future ones, head over to the intheweedspod.com, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify. The kitchen may be closed for now, but the conversation never stops. We are 86 for now. Until next time.